Hello and welcome to The Hero's Spouse. I'm Kendra Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have an anonymous female left behind and forward-moving spouse with a bomb drop of November 24th, 2023, a date of marriage of 2000. She has a boomerang who is a high-energy read player. She says, my ex-husband and I originally were married in July of 2000. We were divorced in August of 2010. I wished I had this information way back then when my initial bomb drop happened. It was a week after our 9th anniversary. Anyway, my ex was textbook everything that you have discussed. Now, short version. He left me for a woman he worked with. He never moved in with her, but he lived with his parents from 2010 to 2014. It was supposed to be 6 months only. Anyway, it didn't work out after being together for 4 years. My MLCer went to therapy on his own. By May 2014, our oldest was graduating from the 8th grade, heading into high school. I had bought a house on my own the year prior, and by June 2014, this was the start of our relationship again. We dated until 2017, so there's a 3-year of dating. That was a really good thing that you did, that dating transition. Until 2017, then we moved back in with our family. We never remarried. Although, moving back in, you were in a marital style relationship. You considered that a marriage, didn't you? Okay. And I say this because in November of 2023, he did another bomb drop. So what do we have? We have 2017, and we have 6 years. 6 years, okay. By February of 2024, he was at his parents' again. Why is history repeating? He said it feels like when we were married, I'm assuming before. He's done. It's too late. Okay, so many of you have heard this over and over again from me. And I'm going to say some other things with it. If an MLCer gets yanked out the front, they will go back in. Often there's a 10-year gap for another MLC. But wait a second. You said yanked out the front. In other words, if their MLC seems to end prematurely before that 3 to 7 year gap. But I've also seen it when it doesn't end prematurely. When I've seen the full arc of an MLC, I sometimes still see another MLC afterwards. That's going to scare all of us. That shouldn't it? So what's going on here? And we can't know. We're going to have guesses in here. A lot of what I think is going on is that how much rug sweeping do we do? The first thing you said that I'm really impressed with, you did things right first. Maybe not everything. I can't tell you. He went to therapy on his own. That's the right thing to do. So you did some of the things you need to do for insurance against that. He did therapy on his own. You dated again, and you put a big gap of that dating. You were dating for 3 years. That's the amount you should date when you haven't been together before. Usually, in this situation, you would have had a shorter transition. You would have dated for 6 to 12 months and come on, hon, let's just get home. So I'm impressed with what you did with that. The next question, though, is did you go to marriage counseling? He went to therapy on his own. What kind of counseling did you do as a family or as a couple? Because that could be. If you didn't do something to heal the relationship, but you just healed the individuals, there's something there with that. And that can help to follow into old patterns. Because he says, it feels just like when we were married. And you know what? Here's the other thing. It is just like when we were married because that's what marriage is like. Maybe one of the things is this notion we have, this fantasy of marriage, especially when going through transitions or when we fall into our negative patterns or our depressions, and the fantasy does not meet with the reality. Because it sounds like you had a reality. And no, this isn't what I wanted. Well, what you have is reality. It's not unicorns and rainbows. It's fights. It's taxes. It's bills. It's sickness. Sometimes it's poopy diapers. It's teenagers. It's teenagers coming home drunk. It's teenagers getting mad at you. It's running around all the time with doctor appointments for each kid so that you don't have time for each other. And hi, honey, and running back. And the only time you see each other is when you are crossing, bumping into each other in the cars as one of you is leaving and one of you is coming back to the house. And I say that because that happened to Chuck and me a few minutes ago as I was rushing out the door and he was just coming back in between appointments. Because of all of the appointments and rushing kid to here and here and here, it's busy. And that's life. And so sometimes it is the fantasy that our culture puts. And if you look at social media and the curated life that is out there, that's not real. So that could be part of it. And midlife crisis comes along. And they see these fantasies or they get these fantasy ideas. And an affair is a curated life. An affair is a life where you get to escape those things and have the fantasy. And when the affair runs through its course and they go to live together and they get that, the fantasy does wear off because they get to real life too. Fantasies, remember, can't last because real life intercedes. Okay? So that's going to be part of it. Then the other part of it is, why is history repeating? Is one of the things and let's go back to the yanked out the front of the tunnel metaphor. When they're yanked out the front, they didn't get all of the issues that they needed to work through. And that can still be the case when they did go through the arc of their midlife crisis. There are still other issues. There might have been so many. Or maybe more issues came up. We keep living and keep facing traumas through our lives. There are more things that we might have to figure out and integrate back into ourselves. And so he's got some things that he's falling into his developmental gaps, and he's falling into old patterns, and he doesn't know what to do. So through development, we get our coping skills, and oftentimes we get negative coping skills, and we fall back on those negative coping skills. Our brain falls back on them because it's easier. We don't know what to do. We go back to these, even though they didn't work, but we don't know what else to do. And so we go back to what we were trained and taught, not in the sense of trained by here's what to do, but by what was patterned through us, through our upbringing. And so that's what we know. We know that what our parents modeled for us, some of the negative behaviors that they modeled, well, that's how we learned to handle things also. And so in times, even though we know that didn't work, it's familiar and our brains recognize those patterns and just fall back into them. And so he might also fall back into them, fall back into negative coping skills. And he might not even be aware of that. So both of those things can be going on. And so think about what that needs to be done. You need to heal. The two, and I mean you individual, you as the family, your children, and then you as a couple. You may not have done that previously. Did you go to marriage counseling? I like how you took your time with your recovery in the sense of dating for that transition. But what else did you do? Did you talk about it? Did you make amends? Did he take accountability? Recognize the trust issues you had? If none of that was done, then anything to follow may even be practically inevitable. If he didn't take accountability for what he did and recognize, have empathy for what he did to you. I don't know, maybe he did. So why is history repeating? No, it doesn't. For everyone out there, I want you to be reassured. It doesn't repeat with everyone. It is not inevitable that this does, but it can. This is why if you have a rebuild, your spouse returns to you and you are rebuilding your marriage, this is why counseling is important, with a counselor who you both can have rapport with, who you're both comfortable with. Emotionally focused therapy, really important, because that is a therapy that is designed for affair recovery. If there was an affair for your midlife crisis, something where your emotions, the feeling of betrayal, you can hold your emotions safe within the therapeutic context, in that therapeutic space where you can learn to be vulnerable together and feel safe in your vulnerability with each other. And it's designed for that. And that is how you're going to build trust again. But if somebody isn't willing to do those things, how can you do that? And if somebody doesn't ever trust, and the other person who, let's say the other person has become trustworthy, they are worthy of your trust, but you're so hurt that you don't trust anymore, and you're broken, but you haven't done the enough counseling, then that other person becomes irritable with you. Why can't you just get over it? I'm trustworthy now. Maybe they're being trustworthy in their actions, but they're not being trustworthy in their empathy. They're not being trustworthy in their accountability, but they're being trustworthy in that they're not having an affair anymore, and they just want you to get over it. There's more to being trustworthy than just not having an affair and just coming home. And there's more to being trustworthy than being transparent with your phone and your passwords. Empathy. So there is a lot to recovery from an affair and what was done. And the next piece are, what kind of traumas does he have? Childhood traumas or other traumas? Really, the main thing that we look at is childhood traumas and the extent of those, any traumas. Anyone with an extreme stable background, and remember, you can have stable family, but traumas. Your house burned down, you were in hurricanes, and a war-torn, but lovely family, trauma. But military, stable family, and then you join the military, severe trauma. So what kind of traumas does he have that he has to process? Or any brain injuries, that sort of thing as well. So that could add to these things. Those are the questions I want you to be asking. Okay? And then go through, you may have already done this, but go through Understanding Midlife Crisis and see if that can help you understand any more. It is not uncommon for this to happen. It sucks. It really sucks. And it feels less common when it seems like you do the right things and when they go through the arc of a crisis, because you described 4 years together of this 2010 to 2014. And then you dating for a few years. But it does happen. So I'm really sorry. But I hope this can help you. And if you'd like to provide any more information and ask any more questions, please feel free to do that. And I will see everybody in the next question.